How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and I'm beyond pumped up to get into this Mets update segment, February 13th, 2025. Yesterday, we broke down in respective content a live stream with Mets beat reporter Pat Ragazzo and a late-night video separately from that on further reactions to Alex Bregman signing in Boston, Nick Pivetta landing in San Diego, and how that impacts things with Dylan Cease and the Mets of a potential trade. So check that out whenever you guys get a chance, because today now, folks, we are going over Brandon Sproat, Mets top pitching prospect, and he continued to light up the lamp and absolutely dazzled everyone in company there at PSL today. Throwing a couple innings, we're going to further react to Brandon Sproat's comments that he shared with the media himself on his high expectations for 2025, Carlos Mendoza and how he feels for him. Because, guys, this is not only just a prospect, this is a guy that can easily impact the Mets greatly potentially in this rotation as soon as the season, and potentially even in the first half of the season. Yeah, I'm excited about this one the same way I'm excited about Francisco Alvarez and the swing adjustments that he's properly made for the 2025 season. How did that come about, and why has he doubled down on the Mets having the best lineup in baseball? We're going to deep dive it all, as well as Clay Holmes' newest arsenal, in which we finally know the actual pitches all involved in that arsenal, in case you guys don't know yet. So let me see your initial reactions in the comments down below. Thank you so much for smashing that like and subscribe button as your first time in, and shout out to our amazing sponsor at BetUS, which has you covered when it comes to all of your sports betting needs. But folks, I want to see the initial reactions on the Brandon Sproat front, because that has been the most telling one to me. And also shout out to the Mets, the official Mets YouTube account, because the highlights, again, the quality you see beside me is just chef's kiss. I love these little clips that they're posting there on YouTube every single day. Check them out in case you guys haven't already. But Brandon Sproat, guys, in case you guys have been living under a rock, Brandon Sproat has been taking the Mets minor leagues by storm. If we just go back to this past season, folks, Brandon Sproat did tremendous things for this Mets team. Mind you, this is a 21, 22-year-old or so that currently started last year in the minor leagues. We're talking beginning in Single A and finishing the year in Triple A in Syracuse. There were fans arguing that Brandon Sproat should be called up for the playoff push down the stretch for the Mets, and now here we are. Brandon Sproat is expected to not only look fantastic throughout spring training, but also really make a case as a rotation piece for the Mets in the first half of this season. And he dominated in over 100 innings last season, all the way from Single A to Triple A. Sproat posted just over a 3-year array there, had a little bit of an adjustment there at the Triple A level that we're going to hear his thoughts of from himself and Carlos Mendoza today. I think will reaffirm any fans that have a level of skepticism with someone like him, and he lights up the lamp, guys. When you look at the arsenal of Brandon Sproat, that's the most exciting thing, right? You got the new two-seam, that's a part of his arsenal, that two-seam fastball. You're going to have the changeup, the sweeper, and the slider that really profiles more as a cutter. It's a tighter shape to it, as well as the velocity that comes there, obviously, with the two-seam. The guy throws 100. He throws absolute gas. He is a human highlight reel. He was striking out everyone and their mother in the minor leagues last year. And now let's hear from Carlos Mendoza's mouth himself what he has to say on Brandon Sproat and his impact.
Sproat in particular, you've probably seen a little bit of him pitching and certainly gotten the reports on him. What do you like?
There's a lot to like about him, he's got 5 pitches, and he's the ability to spin the baseball, where there's this short slider, the sweeper, the changeup is really, really good. And then he's got velo, and everything I heard about him, whether it's the makeup, the compete, how much he cares, it's exciting. So saw him today, and then just watching him interact for the past couple of days, pretty impressive.
So you can tell that Mendy's being calm there, but the fact that he emphasized the changeup stands out a lot to me, because for those that are unaware, usually when a pitcher is getting their career started, especially at the major league level, after they're being drafted, one of the main things you're going to work on right away is getting a changeup going, right? That's one of those pitches that's usually one of the last pieces of the puzzle for a lot of young starters when they get drafted into the MLB, sign whatever it's going to be. In the case of Sproat, what's exciting is that this is a guy that not only has, a fastball that's plus on the velocity, not so much on the shape, but on the velocity alone, and that changeup, again, has a lot of exciting aspects to it. So to see the changeup be a plus type pitch already for him in his arsenal is going to be huge, and that's what is going to help pave the way for him and having MLB success as soon as the season. It is that 5-pitch mix and how to utilize it greatly, the way that Sproat certainly did this past season.
He was great for a lot of last year and struggled in AAA. What do you make of?
So he's being asked by, I believe, Tim Healy, but don't quote me on that. I'm just based on what I'm hearing right now. He's asking what were the struggles with Brandon Sproat last year, and what are your thoughts on that? In AAA, because as we know, as he got sent to AAA for a little stint towards the end of the year, he really labored there versus otherwise dominating pretty much every single level in the minor leagues up until that point.
That's baseball. And I think, honestly, I'm probably not going to sound right, but you want those guys to struggle in the minor leagues. You want those guys to face some type of adversity and see how they're going to respond, because that's part of it, being a big leaguer, the mental side and how you're going to respond after a bad outing, how, you're going to get knocked down. You got to find a way to get back up. And I was, not going to say glad, but it was good to see that he was getting hit around a little bit and kind of humble him a little, because he kind of flew through the minors. And it was kind of easy for him. And, he got to a level where, like, okay, I have to make some adjustment, which he did. And here he is, second year, and he's already in big league camp.
Yeah, and I think the fact that we've seen a guy like Sproat deal with those adjustments already at the AAA level is huge, because we fully expect Brandon Sproat to begin the year in AAA unless he truly dazzles to the point in spring training that you can't send him down. He needs to be in the rotation right away, and I hope and pray that that in fact becomes the case. But at minimum, he'll be starting the year in AAA per David Stearns of recent days that we've heard him talk to the media. And if that does in fact happen, it feels like it's not going to be too long of a time before he gets the call up, because as Brandon alluded to himself and we'll get into, those adjustments went in hand with really just trying to handle a greater stage, right? To be a part of a greater level that he's ever been a part of. I think it was a little bit easier for Brandon to kind of high fly through the lesser minor leagues there when you look at the single A and double A versus actually getting up to triple A, where you're facing more, again, veteran MLB players that are, washed to the point that they're not everyday players and, they're stored in triple A. And that was a bit of adjustment for Brandon to handle. His fastball get eaten up quite a bit there in the early goings of his stint when called upon. But I'm really excited, and I have a lot of optimism for a guy like him, because when it comes to the hype of a pitching prospect like this for Brandon Sproat, it's hard to envision the last time that we've had hype to this degree, right? I mean, when you look at the Noah Syndergaards of the world, when you look at the Jacob deGroms, when you look at those 2015, 2016 Mets range of rotation and that in-house talent, that was tremendous. The Mets haven't really been able to develop too much in-house talent since then when looking at the starting pitching position, not named David Pearson. So Brandon can truly blossom to be this next guy, to be the heir apparent, as well as a Crystal Scott once he gets back from Tommy John surgery. That's going to be absolutely vital. And let's hear Brandon's remarks today. And also, I'd like to preface, a lot of people were giving my guy Brandon a hard time today because he said, like 1,000 times throughout his interview. I'm going to go on a limb and say that Brandon isn't accustomed to being swarmed with New York media like this often. Clearly isn't. Let's pump the brake. Give the kid a chance. It's okay. Even if he is not answering the questions all how you like him, it doesn't matter, because all we care about is him dominating on the mound, right? I think that's what we can all agree upon. Let's get this pulled up right here.
I know it's early in camp, but is there a veteran you've talked to the most at this point?
Talked to Holmes a little bit, just because he's one of the first ones I met. Sean Manaea came up to me and introduced himself today, so that was cool. I've known Beatty from AAA. C. Scott, I've known him since college. He's a big one for me to lean on, because I've known him the longest. We have a good connection. I look forward to meeting more of the guys as camp goes on.
I know it's early in camp.
Yeah,
is there
so
a veteran
Brandon Sproat, the reason why I want to emphasize that one in particular is the fact that he's talked to Clay Holmes already, is that's going to pair in hand with what we're talking about when it comes to Clay Holmes today and his new arsenal. And I'm not going to be too long-winded with this, so to simply put, we broke down Clay Holmes yesterday in our live stream and video content, so check it out in case you haven't. But Clay Holmes' new official arsenal, which last year was what I believe there, you're going to have the sweeper, you're going to have the sinker, and the slider. So he had that three-pitch mix last year as a reliever for the Yankees. Now, this year for the Mets, it is as follows. He has that sinker, he's utilizing a forcing fastball back in that mix for the first time in a number of years, and he also has the changeup in there, which is something that he did not have for the Yankees this past season. So a nice 5-pitch mix is what you're going to be getting from Clay Holmes, who's already been at Port St. Lucie for a month plus, working hard there, working on that arsenal, pitched 3 innings comfortably yesterday, the same way that Brandon Sproat pitched 2 or 3 comfortable innings today for the Mets. This is great signs to see for this Mets rotation, and hopefully what's going to be a rotation that has plenty of upside as we get into the season. I know that on paper it's not certainly the best. It's not going to beat the Dodgers right now by any stretch of the imagination, nor is anyone else for that matter when looking at things on paper. But there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the Mets and where they're standing with the rotation heading into this season where they were a year ago. David Stearns, that we talked about yesterday, was on record saying that I'm in a much better place with my confidence level in this rotation, how I feel heading into the year versus how I felt heading into last year. And mind you, that was still a Mets team that was carried in large part by their rotation at times throughout the course of the season, like Luis Severino giving you 7 strong innings, like Sean Manaea working on that arm slot change and then being a truly Samoan southpaw dominant force for this team. Then you look at Jose Quintana having some success down the stretch. David Pearson absolutely carving it up pretty much from the time he started last year in June, coming back from hip surgery. The list goes on, guys. There's a lot to be excited about, a lot to be optimistic about, and Brandon Sproat has found himself in that category. And as we can see, not only here's his further interview from today, but also just kind of how his at-bats have been going. Mind you, he faced guys like Brett Beatty today. He also faced guys like Francisco Alvarez, Jesse Winker. He did, in fact, strike out Jesse Winker today, if I'm not mistaken. It feels like everyone's been striking at Jesse Winker in the early goings of spring training, but Brandon's looked good, and it's really, really exciting to see a guy like him who's only in his early 20s that has expected to impact this Mets team potentially greatly as soon as this season, right? I think at absolute worst for a guy like Brandon, he struggles at the major league level and then has to get sent back down, and then he deals with the ebbs and flows of handling that and balancing that, the up and down, and that actually goes directly in hand with why I want to show you guys the following clip as well, which has further to do with our guy and Brandon Sproat.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was, pretty solid. It was a fun year. High A was good, Double A was good. Obviously, it's no surprise, struggled a little bit in Triple A. I think for me, I kind of got away from, who I am up there, and that's, attacking no matter what, not worrying about results. She kind of got away from that a little bit. It was a learning curve. You learn from it, you move on. So.
Why did you get away from that?
Nerves kind of kicked in, a little bit of a bigger stage, and, obviously, there's going to be a little bit of a bigger stage in the big leagues.
So he just goes on to pretty much reiterate that exact same sentiment. So Sproat, again, couldn't handle the bright lights right away. And that's an honest thing. And I appreciate the fact that he was as blunt as he was and pretty much just telling the media right away, yeah, I had the nervous jitters. I couldn't handle it as much as I thought I could initially, and I need to make proper adjustments. I lost myself a little bit, but I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident this year. And mind you, Sproat's already, we don't have the exact radar gun on there yet, but he's at least sitting mid to high 90s already this spring training. So that's ecstatic for a guy that, again, touches 100, has some really, really intriguing, especially the changeup, working on those off-speed and breaking pitches more will be key for Brandon, as well as the true shape of his fastball. But that's where a guy like Desi Drewskull, the Mets signed out of the Yankees organization this past year, will certainly help in that regard, who is the Mets' current assistant pitching coach and is quite literally known for working on pitch shape, among other things. So Brandon, happy to have you, my man. This is going to be a really exciting spring training. I have a feeling I'm going to be talking about Brandon Sproat a lot every single week up until the regular season begins, and when he either gets sent down last minute or he actually cracks a roster spot right away. That surprises us all because he's simply unhittable in spring training. That would be the absolute best case scenario to begin the year, at least. But before we get into our guy in Francisco Alvarez and wrapping up the show here, I did want to show you guys some other key remarks from both Carlos Mendoza as well as David Stearns today when talking about some other players, whether that's Jose Budo, whether that's Daniel Nunez, whether that is Luis Angel Acuna. I want to share these because I thought they were important.
I thought he handled it well last year, even when, some of the outings where he wasn't as good. You said it. When he first came up, he was pretty nasty for us, and every time he took the baseball, whether it was 2 innings, 3 innings, high leverage. And then, I think the role he was kind of like a back and forth, where he's 1 out in 2, 3 innings, and then we needed him to go back to back because, we needed that. And he took a toll on him. He was pretty gassed towards the end, and to his credit, he kept taking the baseball. We were playing the NLCS, and there were days where like he needed an extra day. Where it's like, hey man, if you need me, I'm available. And
I love that. So Jose Budo, who had a really good kind of first true year with the Mets, first half started out as a starter, but, couldn't really go beyond 4 or 5 innings for us. Was walking a lot of guys, but also wasn't giving up too much hard contact at times, which was encouraging to see. So Budo goes from a starter to a full-time reliever for the Mets as the course of the year goes on because of injuries and also him not being as consistent as a starter as we would like. He dominates in that multi-inning relief role for pretty much the good stretch of the second half. And then Budo was throwing meatballs, sadly, in the playoffs that we all saw, right? It's at least good to hear that Budo, he was gassed and he needed extra days, and that went in hand with probably why, he didn't perform as well as we would have liked to see. But in a first true year for Jose Budo, I really have little to nothing to complain about on that front. And he is yet another guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing his impact on the Mets out of this bullpen, in which he'll be starting the year ramping up as a reliever. Unlike last season where he was ramping up as a starter, now he has a normal ramp up as a reliever. And that's also the case with our guy in Danilo Nunez, who Anthony Como reported earlier today. Nunez, who missed, the majority of the second half last year due to injury, is looking good. And he's fully healthy. He's touching 96 on the gun today, which was fantastic. And the team considers him fully healthy, and he's ready to go for the year. That's massive because Danilo Nunez was our little Edwin Diaz 2.0 with the slider, with the fastball, sitting high 90s and the slider sitting high 80s as a true setup man for Edwin. It was kind of like a 1-2 punch between the two, which was exciting. Nunez was carving it up big time with just over a 2 ERA and a solid amount of innings, I think right around 30 or so this past year for the Mets up until his injury. But Nunez, who, mind you, didn't even break the Mets roster out of camp. He started the year in the minor leagues again. He came out of nowhere, gets the call. The guy's electric. We've had him in the farm stored for years, and now we're having an in-house option surely blossom before our very eyes. Love to see that with Danilo Nunez, another exciting piece of the puzzle in this Mets bullpen for 2025. David Stearns, when talking about the pressure for Mark Vientos and how he handles it.
Better quality pitching in the playoffs. Does that speak to an adjustment? Is it too small of a sample size to judge? Or
I don't know, other than he's not scared. The moment doesn't impact him. He's ready to go, and he wants to compete. And I think when you're performing at the level he performed at in October, you're going to enjoy it. But I think he relished that environment. When we're in Philly and he's got 45,000 people, going crazy, and he hits a huge 2-run homer to tie a game, that's a pretty special feeling, and I think he really enjoyed that.
I think David really enjoyed that too. You could see the big grin. David, being the diehard Mets fan that he is, who, mind you, is still very much a diehard sports fan across all New York sports, which is awesome to see and hear from recent interviews I've seen. And David, we saw him allow Mark Vientos to be given the keys to really run away with it at third base last year after Beatty failed after another 40-50 game sample size, and Vientos made the most of it. And I think not only the swagger, which is why we call him Swaggy V, but the confidence like Francisco Alvarez that we're about to transition into in a second here is really notable to me, because these are guys that are young, hungry, but are dominating Major League Baseball right away and are doing it kind of effortlessly. Vientos has had the power, but he's feeding off the confidence, and he's feeding off of being a big market player in clutch time. That is huge. For that to be a homegrown talent like Pete Alonso is all you could ask for as a Mets fan. This is going to be a massive year for Vientos, the deepest lineup he's ever been a part of. Slam dunk guarantee Vientos hits at least 33 home runs this year. Book it. Let me know. Home run predictions for Marky V in the comments down below, baby. That's what I want to see. And final remarks that we're going to hear from David today are as follows.
It stands with it just being that smaller sort of bench utility type that's up for grabs.
Yeah, I think that's a discussion we're going to continue to have throughout camp, and it's a possibility. He's in that competition. He's part of that competition, but we've got a lot of time to make that decision. There's a lot of things that could happen between now and then before we have to make that decision. So we'll answer that when we need to at the end of camp.
Would you then be?
I love the fact that Stearns was so non-committal there, because he said, a lot of things can happen. I think Jose Iglesias is one of those things. Call me crazy. I know that David said it yesterday that, I think that's about right. And are we done making, moves and stuff like that? But you never officially close a door for a reason. And I'm not officially closing the door with Jose Iglesias the same way I never did with Alonso until we find out that Jose officially signs elsewhere. Then I'll say, okay, that ship has finally sailed. Bam, we're moving on. Even with everything looking inclined that the Mets are moving in a different direction from bringing Jose Iglesias back. Outside of that, also has to do with guys looking really good in camp, right? If Nick Madrigal really looks stellar, then he absolutely could win that role over a guy like Luis Angel Acuna potentially. That's in the realm of possibility. That's why the Mets signed him to a split contract, a very plus defender, a former top pick from 2017, 2018. And since then, he has not been able to have the consistency with the bat. Go figure, but the defense has pretty much been there throughout his young career. So we'll see what happens on the utility front for the Mets, but that's going to be a big position battle where you're going to see Acuna, among others, compete for it, as well as Acuna even competing for second base still, because I think if he has enough of an impressive spring that he could at least have Carlos Mendoza and the Mets contemplate how they're going to go about the utilization of Jeff McNeil heading into the season. But all right, guys, now let's get into the final comment, and this I'm actually going to play with some Francisco Alvarez stuff next week, because I like to do those things. I like to have them kind of sync together to the best of my ability. So now we got Alvy, who did BP earlier today that we saw against Brandon Sproat, so perfect there for that I just run on. Francisco Alvarez, guys. We talked about him a couple days ago. He said to the media that he believes that the Mets have the best lineup in Major League Baseball. He was asked about that again, and he doubled down on it. John Heyman came out with a good read that you guys can check out through the New York Post over this past day, breaking down how he is doing the proper kind of cockiness, the proper kind of, crap talk, if you will, in the way that he's just really confident and really genuine about how he feels about his teammates. And he went on record stating today, literally, you guys can see the quote right here, "I think we are better than the Doubters." And that comes from BR Walkoff for that exact tweet. But you guys, if you don't know, I am a Bleacher Report MLB host, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern in the Bleacher Report app, talking MLB-wide topics. I touched on this Alvarez topic earlier today in the BR app, so check me out there whenever you guys get a chance if you haven't already. But yeah, Alvarez is feeling confident. I know that a lot of people are going to use this quote and rag on him big time. I know Dodgers fans will be the first to do that, and I understand that the Dodgers on paper are just simply stupid, but I also respect Alvarez for being as confident as he is and really backing up his teammates. That is what John Heyman alluded to. It was nothing about it being a jab at the Dodgers as it is about him and his confidence and his genuine feelings for the team heading into the year. Because mind you, Alvarez and the Mets got all the way to Game 6 of the NLCS against the Dodgers last year, okay? Offensively, they thankfully didn't do anything drastic this offseason. Pitching-wise, he did, sadly. Well, their big offseason acquisitions on the bat front are headlined by guys like Michael Conforto, unless I'm missing anyone, and Hai-Sung Kim, and bringing back Kike Hernandez. It was more of the utility guys than anything else. Juan Soto added to the mix, an 8-WAR player from this past year, is significant. And I think the Juan Soto aspect alone is why Alvarez has as much confidence as he does. Because think about it. If the Mets had Juan Soto in that lineup against the LA Dodgers, the Mets probably at least go a full 7 games against the Dodgers. And there's a solid chance the Mets may actually have won that series. Now, I say that knowing Freddie Freeman didn't play for multiple games, in which the Mets still lost those games. I say that knowing that Tommy Edman and Max Muncy were some of the biggest X factors when they were pretty much non-existent to a degree, especially Muncy in the World Series. So it's kind of pick your poison always with the Dodgers. So I'm not going to sit here and reflect and say, oh, shoulda, coulda, woulda. All I'm saying is I get what Alvy's trying to put down here. And when you're working on his swing the way that he's been and looking as comfortable as he's been with his swing lately, I think that's something notable. In case you guys haven't seen it, Francisco Alvarez has adjusted his swing. It honestly looks better. It looks a lot more compact, especially on the follow-through. And a big reason for this, guys, is the hitting savant himself and JD Martinez. We can all thank JDM because even though he's no longer a Met, he's still impacting this Mets team as the true hitting coach that he was, not named Eric Chavez last season. JDM recommended, per Will Sam of The Athletic, shout out you, Will, we love you on the platform, in a recent piece that Alvarez actually went to Atlanta this offseason. I know, but don't worry, not the Braves, but he did go to a facility in Atlanta where JD Martinez highly recommended him to go to work on his swing, where JDM has worked in previous years, and that's exactly what Alvarez did. So Alvy's swing looks a bit more compact. I like it a lot. Again, there is some similarity, honestly, to JD Martinez when we look side by side with it, and I know that he's not really taking too many hacks, so let's go back to the beginning of this relay, but there, again, just not looking nearly as loose, I think, was the big thing, because there were times with Alvarez who he just did not look at all comfortable, I felt like, and he's a guy that I have a lot of high expectations for. Fangraphs has him projected to give 20 home runs to the Mets this season and be a plus offensive defensive player for the first time in his career. So Alvy and this deep lineup, I think he's going to absolutely eat. I think he's going to cook. I think Alvarez, healthy, is destined for at minimum a 25 to 30 plus home run season. One of at least 6 plus batters for the Mets that can give you 25 plus home runs this season. That's a pretty good thing. Mets fans, that is going to wrap up our show. Thank you so much for watching. This is the latest Mets updates video that we got into. If you guys enjoy the content, please let us know all your takeaways in the comments down below. Not only on what we broke down with Mr. Brandon Sproat, Francisco Alvarez, Clay Holmes, and everyone else in between. And be on the lookout as we will have more content coming out. Might be a little bit lighter this weekend because we got the nice holiday weekend coming up, Valentine's Day. Hope all you guys have a great time with your loved ones, especially with your partners. You guys are going to be celebrating or whatever it might be. So might be a little bit lighter on the content throughout the weekend, but rest assured we'll have more Mets content all week long, every single week, off season, in season, spring training, doesn't matter, here on the WardyNYM platform. Thank you guys again. Let's go Mets. Peace out.